Something strange is happening in 2025 and most Americans haven't realized it yet. For decades, Americans were the world's favorite travelers welcomed everywhere, flashing blue passports that opened doors across the globe. But this year, something has changed. From Europe to Asia, and even right next door in Canada, U.S. tourists are finding those doors quietly closing. Flights are being canceled, visa applications delayed, and border inspections more intense than ever. Americans who once felt free to explore the world are now facing rejection, not because of who they are, but because of what their country represents right now. This isn't about a few bad travel stories or a temporary policy glitch. It's part of a global shift, one fueled by politics, perception, and power. America's image abroad has taken a hit, and the ripple effects are reaching airports, hotels, and tourist sites around the world. In 2025, international arrivals to the United States dropped by nearly 7%, marking one of the steepest declines in decades. Canadian tourism to the U.S. fell sharply, while surveys reveal that over 70% of travelers globally now see America less favorably than they did just a few years ago.
American tourist hotspot. You might not have noticed it yet, but tourism to the U.S. is on the decline.
And the irony? It's not just that fewer foreigners are coming to the U.S., it's that Americans themselves are now finding travel abroad harder than ever. So today, we're unpacking why this is happening, where it's hitting hardest, and what it means for every American planning to travel abroad in 2025. Stay with me until the end because the real story here isn't just about tourism. It's about how the world now sees America and whether that image can be repaired before it's too late. The shift in global perception. The first reason for this wave of rejection is perception. For years, the American traveler carried an image of confidence, sometimes too much of it, but also of generosity, curiosity, and freedom. The world saw Americans as adventurous people, exploring other cultures. But after years of political division, trade wars, and controversial foreign policies, that reputation has started to erode. Recent U.S. actions, from aggressive tariffs on allied economies to new border controls and immigration bans, have created global resentment. When governments clash, citizens feel it first. And now, Americans are finding out what that means in real time. Many countries are quietly tightening entry rules for U.S. passport holders. Some are imposing new documentation requirements or reducing visa-free travel durations. Even where official policies haven't changed, there's a shift in tone, more suspicion at customs, less warmth in welcome. In other words, being an American abroad used to mean privilege. In 2025, it often means extra questions, the political fallout. Politics is now shaping travel in ways most Americans never imagined. In 2025, the image of the American traveler has changed, not because of who they are, but because of what their country represents. New trade wars, stricter border policies, and high-profile diplomatic clashes have made global headlines. And that tension is spilling directly into airports, embassies, and visa offices worldwide. No country is openly banning American tourists, but the message is subtle and clear. We're not as welcoming as before. Visa processing takes longer. Random security screenings are more frequent. Airline staff quietly warn passengers to expect delays at customs. It's not an official ban, it's what experts call soft retaliation. When Washington makes it harder for foreigners to enter or introduces new tariffs, other countries respond quietly but firmly. They slow things down, they tighten their systems, and for everyday Americans just trying to travel, it feels personal. Even U.S. allies are showing fatigue. In Europe, in parts of Asia, even in Latin America, governments are pushing back against what they see as American exceptionalism. The tone has shifted from hospitality to hesitation. For decades, the U.S. passport opened doors. Now, in 2025, it's starting to open questions. Why are you visiting? How long will you stay? What's the purpose of your trip? It's not about individuals, it's about image. And for the first time in generations, the American traveler is discovering that global goodwill isn't guaranteed anymore. Europe and the visa shock. Europe used to be the easiest trip on an American's bucket list with no paperwork, no restrictions, just a stamp and a smile at customs. But starting in 2025, that's changed dramatically. The European Union's new ETIAS system now requires U.S. citizens to register online before traveling. It's not a visa, but it's a clear reminder that automatic access is over. Americans must now submit personal information, pay a fee, and pass a quick background check before they can even board their flight. Officials call it a modern security update, but it's also symbolic. It's Europe saying, "We trust you, but we'll verify first." Behind the scenes, many European nations have grown increasingly frustrated with U.S. policies, from environmental rollbacks to protectionist trade measures. Those tensions have slowly filtered into tourism policy. The world that once catered to American travelers is beginning to balance the scales. Travel industry analysts are already seeing it. Bookings from the U.S. to Europe are dipping, while arrivals from Asia, the Middle East, and South America are rising. American tourists who once flooded Rome, Paris, and Barcelona are being replaced by a more global mix. And for Americans used to being the world's most welcome visitors, this new reality stings. It's not a ban, it's a slow recalibration. The privilege of easy travel is fading, replaced by something colder. Procedure, paperwork, and quiet resentment. The golden passport still works, but in 2025, it no longer opens every door. Asia's changing attitude. Across Asia, the story is even more complex. From Japan to Thailand, tourism agencies that once counted on American travelers are reporting a steep decline. Part of it is economic. The strong dollar makes U.S. visitors more expensive to host, but part of it is cultural fatigue. In countries like South Korea and Malaysia, American tourists are increasingly viewed through a political lens. Younger generations, especially, are skeptical of U.S. global influence and perceive American travelers as less respectful of local customs. At the same time, Asian nations are pivoting toward intra-regional travel, welcoming Chinese, Indian, and Middle Eastern visitors more than Westerners. For the first time, the American market is no longer a priority. In places like Bali, Indonesia, locals say they've noticed fewer Americans, more Europeans and Australians. Even in the Philippines, where ties to the U.S. remain strong, tourism boards report fewer bookings from U.S. travelers due to rising visa complexities and stricter immigration monitoring. Asia hasn't banned Americans, but it's slowly moving on without them. Canada turns cold. This one stings. For decades, Canada has been America's friendliest neighbor, its partner in trade, defense, and culture. But in 2025, that relationship is under strain. Canadian tourism to Florida and other U.S. destinations has dropped sharply. Canadian travelers say they feel unwelcome due to visa and border delays, confusing tariffs, and political tension between Ottawa and Washington. At the same time, some U.S. states have seen a dramatic drop in Canadian spending, particularly in snowbird destinations that rely heavily on retirees from the north. That loss ripples back across local economies. But what's surprising is how Canadians now perceive American tourists in return. Border agents are stricter, documentation rules are tighter, and the friendly cross-border weekend culture that once defined U.S.-Canada ties is fading. For the first time, Americans traveling north are reporting visible frustration at customs and fewer open arms once they arrive. Reputation versus reality. Not every rejection is political. Some are personal, cultural, and built on years of perception. The U.S. passport is still one of the strongest in the world, but lately, it doesn't carry the same warmth it once did. Image matters, and in 2025, that image is complicated. American tourists have earned a reputation, sometimes unfairly, for being impatient, loud, or dismissive of local customs. A few viral videos on social media travelers, arguing with staff, disrespecting landmarks, or making tone-deaf remarks about foreign politics have painted a whole group with one brush. In an age where every phone is a camera, one bad moment can go global in seconds. That means every traveler now represents their country, and unfortunately, many Americans abroad are paying the price for what others posted before them.
The crowd marched through Chicago this week. We covered it live on the air here against the escalating lawlessness there by masked federal agents.
Or debates over human rights, it affects how they perceive every visitor carrying that blue passport. Fair or not, people associate travelers with the headlines they've seen. Even business owners in tourist-heavy countries have started to adapt. Some hotel managers in Asia and Europe quietly admit they prefer visitors from regions with lower tension. Others have shifted marketing toward European, Middle Eastern, or regional tourists who spend more time connecting with local traditions rather than seeking comfort zones that resemble home. What's emerging is a quiet reality. The American tourist is no longer automatically seen as the dream guest. In some destinations, there's fatigue with politics, with cultural clashes, and with the assumption that the U.S. still sets the global tone. And that's the painful part, because this isn't about money anymore. It's about respect. For years, Americans were the standard bearers of open travel, curiosity, and adventure. In 2025, they're being asked to earn that trust again, not with spending power, but with humility, the emotional cost. Behind every canceled visa or delayed entry stamp, there's a person, a family, a story caught in the middle. For many Americans, travel isn't luxury, it's love. It's visiting a spouse abroad, meeting a child born overseas, seeing a grandparent for the first time in years. It's students finally accepted into programs they've dreamed of since high school, or workers chasing global opportunities to build something better for their families. But as the world hardens its borders, those dreams are being quietly postponed or erased. A young teacher from Seattle gets denied entry into Japan for a cultural exchange. A retired couple from Arizona has their long-planned trip to France canceled after new paperwork delays. A first-generation college student loses her study abroad scholarship because her visa didn't clear in time. It's not the end of the world, but it feels like the end of connection. Every traveler who gets turned away carries that disappointment home, and slowly, something deeper begins to fade. The sense that America still belongs in a shared global story. When Americans stop being welcomed, it doesn't just isolate them physically, it isolates them emotionally. It makes the world feel smaller, colder, and less reachable. And perhaps the hardest part? Many Americans don't understand why this is happening. They wonder how the country that once symbolized freedom of movement has become the one facing rejection. But that's the cost of perception, politics, and power colliding. The policies may change, the bans may lift, but trust takes years to rebuild. Until it does, every traveler stepping off a plane with a U.S. passport will carry not just their luggage, but the weight of how the world now sees America. If this video opened your eyes, hit like, share it, and subscribe. Tell me in the comments, have you or someone you know faced rejection, delays, or tougher treatment while traveling abroad? Do you think this is political payback? Or is it just the world shifting away from U.S. dominance? Because what we're seeing right now isn't just about tourism, it's about trust. The American passport used to mean access, respect, and freedom. In 2025, it's starting to mean questions, caution, and sometimes rejection. The world is watching how America behaves and how it treats others, and for the first time in generations, that reflection is staring right back at U.S. travelers. Stay tuned, stay informed, and remember, reputation travels faster than any plane, and once it's damaged, rebuilding it takes far longer than the flight home.